Ricardo Leyva Ramirez was born February 29, 1960. Born in El Paso, Texas, the youngest of 5 children. His father was a former police officer in Juarez, Mexico, who later worked for the railroad as a laborer. His father was known to be very abusive in moments of anger. At 12, Richard was strongly influenced by a cousin who was a U.S. Army Green Beret veteran. He often bragged about his gruesome activities during the war. He showed Richard pictures of women he had raped and murdered. In one of the pictures, his cousin had posed with a severed head of a woman he had killed. Richard bonded with his cousin over the dark photos and horrific murder stories, and they began using drugs together. His cousin began teaching him how to kill with lethal military techniques. Richard had started sleeping in the cemetery rather than go home and face his father's violence. May 4th, 1973, Richard was visiting his cousin when he shot his wife in the face with a .38 caliber revolver during an argument. After the shooting, Richard became withdrawn from his family and his friends. He moved in with his sister and her husband, who introduced him to LSD. Richard began to take an interest in Satanism. His cousin was found guilty by reasons of insanity and served 4 years in a mental hospital. Once released, he continued to be an influence in Richard's life. The young Richard began to forge sexual fantasies of bondage and rape. At age 22, he settled in California. April 10th of 1984, Richard murdered 9-year-old Mei Ling in the basement of the hotel he was living in San Francisco. He raped, beat, and stabbed the young girl before hanging her from a pipe. This was Richard's first killing. June 28th of 1984, 79-year-old Jeannie Vincow was found brutally murdered in her home in Glassell Park, Los Angeles. She had been repeatedly stabbed savagely and her throat cut so deep that she was almost decapitated. Richard's prints were found on a screen removed from the window to gain access. March 17th of 1985, Richard attacked a young woman, Maria Hernandez, 22, in Rosemead, California, outside her home. Richard had attempted to shoot her in the face, but the bullets ricocheted off the keys in her hand. In the house, her roommate, Daily Yoshi Okazaki, who was 34, heard the gunshot and tried to hide. Richard entered the house through the kitchen. When she attempted to peek to see the intruder, Richard shot her once in the head, killing her. Within 1 hour of the Rosemead home invasion, Richard pulled 30-year-old Tai Lan, Veronica Yu, out of her car in Montgomery Park, California. He shot her twice and fled in her car. She was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital. The 2 murders and the attempted murder, he had done 3 in 1 day, and it attracted the news media, who called him the walking killer and the Valley Intruder. March 27th of 1985, 10 days later, he returned to a home he had robbed 1 year earlier where he shot 64-year-old Vincent Charles Zazzera. He had bound the wife to the bed while he robbed the house. As he returned to the room, 44-year-old Maxine had gotten loose and was standing with a shotgun. When she pulled the triggers, the gun was empty. Richard was angered by her activities and shot her 3 times, stabbed her 7 times, and cut out her eyes. He placed them in a jewelry box and took them with him. He left footprints in the flower beds. The police photographed them and cast them. The bullets were checked and they matched the other murder victims, and police realized a serial killer was at large.